Hey, it's Anna, welcome back to my channel. I think that started before I smiled. That was weird. Moving on. Today is part 1 of my August haul. I'm only going to be hauling 8 books in this video to try and keep it a bit shorter, because I don't think anybody watches my ginormous hauls. Okay, well, like, one person. Maybe 2. So let's, like, dive right into it. The first book I got was The Worst Witch by Jill Murphy. It is the first book in the Worst Witch series. It's a children's fantasy. It follows Mildred Hubble and her misadventures at Miss Cackle's Academy for Witches. Mildred is, you know, fairly intelligent, but she's sort of clumsy and maybe a bit absent-minded, and she makes a lot of mistakes. So, yeah, she isn't very sure that she will even make it to the end of the first school year. I have read this book. I read it for Booktubeathon right at the beginning of the month, and I do just want to kind of quickly put in here, the story starts like partway through the school year, so we don't see all the introduction of, you know, getting to the academy and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, moving on. Book number 2, Every Heart a Doorway by Shannon Maguire. This is the first book in the Wayward Children series, which is like YA fantasy. The series doesn't seem to have a set number of books at this point. They're all sort of standalone stories that kind of connect to the first book. So Every Heart a Doorway. So Every Heart a Doorway is set at Eleanor West's home for wayward children. So she takes in kids who have gone through portals and doorways to other worlds and have come back, and she helps them deal with the reality of being back home and the fact that they may never get to go back to these worlds, these fantastical worlds. So the story starts when Nancy arrives. She's been to an underworld and wants to go back, obviously. And shortly after her arrival, various residents of Eleanor's home for wayward children start showing up dead. So, mystery, and Nancy and her new classmates and friends, whatever you want to call them, try to work out who the murderer is and to stop, you know, how to stop them. So, Every Heart a Doorway. Book number 3, Down Among the Sticks and Bones, also by Shannon Maguire. This is the second book in the Wayward Children series. This book follows the characters of Jack and Jill, and it shows them their story before they end up at Eleanor West's home for wayward children. So, you know, Jack was her mum's perfect daughter. She was polite and quiet and wore frilly dresses. And Gillian was her father's perfect daughter. You know, tomboy, thrill-seeking, adventurous, all those sort of things. So, by 5 years old, the twins have worked out that grown-ups can't be trusted. And when they're 12, they walk down an impossible staircase. I think it was in a chest or something. And they find themselves in a mad world where you have like vampires and mad scientists and all sorts of stuff. It's fabulous. Book number 4, The Witches of New York by Amy McKay. So this is historical fiction / fantasy. It's set in 1880 New York, so the Gilded Age is sort of happening. There seem to be three main characters. First two are Adelaide Tom, who I think worked in a circus and then has decided it's safe enough to be able to call herself a witch, so she leaves and she starts a tea house with Eleanor St. Clair, who was a former medical student. And they cater to high society, and they specialise in things like potions and like cures and palm readings and stuff like that. And one day a young woman called Beatrice Dunn sort of shows up on their door asking for employment. Beatrice, it happens, can see things and hear things that nobody else can, and objects move when she's around, and there are like gifts like deposited, like just left sitting around for her, like, almost like, you know, the spirit world is reaching out. Eleanor sort of just wants to help Beatrice and, you know, let this bizarre gift sort of take its course, but Adelaide sees a business opportunity. So she hires a Dr. Quinn something to like test Beatrice for, I don't know, basically whether or not Beatrice can actually communicate with the spirit world. In the meantime, Beatrice kind of disappears. And yeah, they have to find her. And mystery and all that sort of stuff. Book number 5. A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. It's a fantasy, it is adult from what I can tell. It is the first book in the All Souls trilogy. So, centres around a scholar called Diana Bishop. Now, Diana is working in, like, I'm going to say it wrong, the Bodleian Library, which I think is at Oxford University, if I'm not mistaken. One day in the course of her research, she kind of uses the little cards and says, oh, I'd like this book, and calls up a sort of a bewitched like manuscript that has stuff to do with alchemy, whatever. So Diana is descended from an old and prestigious, distinguished, whatever sort of line of witches, but she really doesn't want anything to do with sorcery at all. So after she's finished sort of using this book, she sends it back to the stacks. But she's already sort of set the underworld stirring. Like hordes of witches and vampires and demons and all sorts of things descend on the library, determined to get their hands on this book. And yeah, it turns out that it is some sort of lost treasure that people have been searching for. Well, underworld creatures have been searching for quite some time, and Diana is the only one who can sort of break the spell. Convenient, I must say. But moving right along, book number 6, The Fortune Teller by Gwendolyn Womack. It is a historical fiction, fantasy, mystery. I believe it is a standalone. I'm going to say this name wrong. The name, it centers around a woman called Smile. She works for a auction house, that's the word, and like praises antiquities and deciphers manuscripts and all that sort of stuff. In her work, you know, this manuscript comes sort of across her desk, essentially, and it's, yeah, very ancient, written in the time of Cleopatra, and it tells the story of this priceless tarot deck. I didn't know tarot was that old, but okay. So it seems to be the work of a prophetess, a seer, somebody who could see the future. This is sort of part memoir, part prophecy, and the author of the manuscript, you know, foretold all these disasters thousands of years before they happened. And yeah, as Samil kind of reads more, she gets more involved with it. Like, she comes to realize that, you know, that there's a connection, some sort of connection, and she sort of needs help working out what the hell's happening. You know, she thinks somebody's following her home and, you know, sort of all sorts of scary things. So she enlists the help of one of her clients at the auction house, that's what it's called, called Theo, and he's a bit, I think, like, reticent. He doesn't really want to help. He keeps everything very hidden, but it seems that he does help. Anyway, basically somebody is after this manuscript, and they are after, you know, this 2,000-year-old secret, and they will do anything to possess it. So yeah, it's sort of a race against time, you know, before the auction, to like work out what's happening, how Samil is like connected to this, involved in this, and yep, I just want to say, don't trust Theo. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. But I haven't read it, so don't quote me. Number 7, The King of Bones and Ashes by J.D. Horn. It is the first book in the Witches of New Orleans trilogy? I think it's a trilogy. I don't know. It's like urban fantasy. The basic premise is that magic is sort of slowly seeping out of the world. It's disappearing. You've got sort of 2 reactions to this. One is that, yeah, okay, it's inevitable, you know, let's just learn to live with it. And the other reaction is, I'm going to do whatever it takes to keep hold of my power. I will backstab and sacrifice, you know, my friends, my family, my allies, to keep hold of this power. So you can sense that there's a bit of tension happening. The main character is a girl called Alice Marin, and, you know, it's a bit later on. Like, the book starts when she's a child, and then I think it jumps. And she is looking into disappearances that are happening in occult circles. And the more she looks into this, the more it seems that her family may somehow be involved in these disappearances, and perhaps in the wider problems of the magical community. There's also something about her family having put her in an asylum, and she's only just got out and stuff. So that was a terrible explanation again. I should just do a series of videos where I mangle, like, the synopses of books. I think I would be excellent at it. My 8th and final book is An Unkindness of Magicians by Kat Howard. It's, again, urban fantasy, and the same sort of premise. Magic is disappearing from the world. So in this book. It's set in New York. In New York, everything is controlled by magic, so magic disappearing is a bit problematic. So no one knows what's happening, really. And then there appears this girl called Sydney. Sydney is a very rare magician. She has unmatched power, you know, the sort of power not seen in generations. So she may be the only person that can, you know, fight the darkness or stop it or whatever. The problem is she wants to destroy the whole magic system that's happening in New York, so that's a little bit unfortunate. It turns out that Sydney comes from the House of Shadows, which controls magic with the help from, yeah, the House of Shadows. They control magic through sacrifices made by magicians. So, yeah. I heard one reviewer sort of say it was a bit like, I don't know, like the Triwizard Tournament from Harry Potter. Tournament, whatever you want to, however you want to pronounce it. Like there are magical battles and stuff. So I thought I'd give it a go. Anyway, if you've read any of these books and loved them or hated them, let me know below. Yeah, that's it from me. I kind of hoped it would be shorter, but it still looks like it's quite long. I'm sorry. I like to talk. Anyway, if you liked my video, which would be really lovely, give me a thumbs up. If you're feeling particularly generous, please subscribe to my channel below. I'm getting desperate. I think I'm actually losing subscribers, which is truly talented. I've only got like 21, and I love all 21 of you. Anyway, thank you for watching my video, and I hope to see you again.